Ryan, I actually get to join you for your radar today.
Excellent.
So tell us what's on it.
Well, so yesterday was quite the roller coaster for Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. It began with news that a top deputy of his had been arrested in Paris in connection with the butchering of journalist Jamal Khashoggi as he was attempting to fly back to Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi authorities are claiming that it's a mistake and that the man they arrested, Khaled al-Otaibi, had nothing to do with Khashoggi's killing or his dismemberment with a bone saw. In what has to count as one of the most brazen and ridiculous lies issued by any government in 2021, they got it in right under the radar, they said that, quote, the Saudi judiciary has issued verdicts against all of those who participated in the heinous murder of Jamal Khashoggi. All of them are currently serving their sentences. Of course, the lead participant, MBS himself, who ordered it, even though he wasn't physically there, is not at all serving a sentence. And Saud al-Qahtani, MBS's closest aide, who is said by multiple intelligence agencies to have overseen the murder personally, is not only still at large, but is welcomed back into polite Saudi society. Now, even if by some wild fluke this Paris arrest was some kind of mistaken identity, which seems unlikely in the extreme, MBS is now on notice that his top lieutenants can be arrested anywhere in the world. Al-Otaibi is very close to MBS and served as his right-hand man when he toured the U.S. back in 2018, partying with U.S. oligarchs and celebrities. Now, yesterday ended with a vote in the U.S. Senate on a resolution put forward by Rand Paul to block $650 million worth of arms sales to Saudi Arabia in protest of its ongoing war against Yemen. On the Senate floor, MBS did better than in the Paris airport. Just 30 senators voted to block the sale, with 67 voting to let it go through, with even some Democrats who've been highly critical of Saudi Arabia siding with the Biden administration to let the weapons go through. Before the vote, I spoke with Lindsey Graham, and like Graham often does nowadays, he laid out the state of the relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia about as bluntly as you can. Here's a bit of that.
I just don't think Khashoggi's killing could not have happened without support at the highest level, and it's clear to me that it had support at the highest level.
How is that affecting your thinking about whether or not to approve this?
I'm going to support the arms sales because the alliance between us and Saudi Arabia is bigger than a single person. But what the Crown Prince did was a giant step backwards in the relationship. It was a disservice to the people who have been supportive of the relationship. It was an insult to those who believe in supporting Saudi Arabia but oppose extrajudicial killing, and it will have it's had an impact on the relationship. And the goal is to make sure that you're clear in condemning one, but also understand that Saudi Arabia is an important ally in the region. I introduced him here several years ago as one of the agents of change, and
on his way up.
Yeah, on his way up. But this whole Khashoggi episode is the very worst in Mideast behavior and human behavior. Having somebody butchered in an embassy is about as bad as it gets in terms of international norms.
What is the way to end the Yemen conflict in your mind without?
Well, I'm more worried about how it ends than when it ends. I don't want to end the Yemen conflict giving Iran a foothold in Yemen, turn the place over to the Houthis, who are aligned with the Iranians. It matters how it ends. The goal is not just to end the conflict. The goal is to end it in a way that America's national security is enhanced, that the people of Yemen don't live under the yoke of the Iranians.
It couldn't be laid out much more clearly than that. Yes, he ordered the dismembering of Khashoggi, but fighting an endless proxy war with Iran is far more important. So Kim, I felt like that was such a perfect distillation of U.S., not just Republican, it's Republican and Democrats, the U.S. relationship with Saudi Arabia. Completely clear-eyed.
Right. And that's, a lot of people, especially after this assassination happened, a lot of people questioning our relationship with Saudi Arabia, wondering why are we still in bed with them, and they commit all of these atrocities, and they, we talk about, the backwards life of those living under the Taliban, and we want to stop that. And that's why we went to war for 20 years in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has barely allowed women the right to drive, still has it to where if you go into a Starbucks, men and women have to go to separate sides. I mean, it's a very different society that is similar in a lot of ways to Taliban control over Afghanistan. And yet, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about their role in human rights abuses or the way that they run their society, their treatment of women, and assassinations. And all of it just gets swept under the rug because we need Saudi Arabia. We need them for the petrodollar. We need them to support that. We need their oil. We need to keep that friendly relationship. We need to have them help us with our proxy war so that Iran doesn't grow in strength in the Middle East. And this is why we... So it calls into question a lot of things when the United States says that we're doing things because we're a moral authority, or we're trying to maintain a certain type of, we're trying to export democracy or export our morality around the world. Are we really?
Right. And Robbie, he gets a lot of credit for finally allowing some women to drive in Saudi Arabia. But at the same time that he did that, he imprisoned the lead activist, the woman who had been pushing for that, where she was tortured and raped and sexually assaulted repeatedly. And there's been a lot of speculation that Al-Qahtani himself was responsible and was involved in overseeing all of that. The guy who was also involved in the Khashoggi killing. And now here you have MBS saying that, well, actually, we punished everybody involved with that.
Right. The neoconservatives talk about like America's the importance of America's role in the world to make the world a better place, a safer place, to foster these freedoms and democracy, et cetera. But it always involves just turning a blind eye to certain bad actors that we need to ally with against other people. And Lindsey Graham, it's important to remember, it's funny now because he's perceived as like the most as this major Trump supporter, Trump ally, pro-Trump person. He ran for president in 2016. He was one of the 15 or 1,000 or however many Republicans who were running. And he ran as like the last sort of desperate lunging out of the neoconservative wing. He was a Trump critic. I mean, they were all critics at the time, but he was explicitly critical of Trump on foreign policy, saying that we needed to double and triple and quadruple down on sort of a Bush approach to all these issues in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, et cetera. And that is his ideology. So it's not if anything, he's gotten a little more honest or clear-eyed about what these trade-offs involve. Now, maybe he's learned from Trump that you can be blunt and you can just say what you actually think and you can acknowledge the ugliness and you're not going to suffer for it. We don't have to pretend that we don't have to dress it up or pretend that it's more noble than it actually is.
Yeah, people might forget. Trump read Lindsey Graham's cell phone number at a rally. Do you remember that?
Right.
Yeah.
And it was his actual cell phone number, and immediately Lindsey Graham's cells just like blowing up. But I think you're right. That is the thing that he has really learned, from Trump. You mentioned that the U.S. often turns a blind eye to Saudi Arabia's human rights abuses, which is absolutely true. But what was so remarkable to me about that Graham exchange, it wasn't a blind eye. It was a completely clear-eyed view that yes,
right.
Yeah, they dismembered. He dismembered this guy in the consulate. But I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave Yemen in the hands of the Houthis, who have some alliance with Iran. And to say that that it doesn't really bother you when the war ends, is just such a chilling.
And look,
thing
it is true. I mean, that people should acknowledge that, who advocate, well, we're going to ally with this regime or this country against this one, right? Like Saddam Hussein was a brutal, murderous lunatic. I don't think we should have done anything about it because we made the situation worse. This is true of all Gaddafi was, horribly repressive, but ISIS grew in his wake. He was in his swimming pool in Libya. Like we don't have to pretend that there aren't. We have previously pretended that, well, these are the bad guys. So all the good guys are coming together to take out the bad guys. And then people would point out, but some of those quote unquote good guys are also kind of bad
right.
in some ways, which is, you have to make difficult trade-offs. I mean, I think a lot of these trade-offs we don't have to make at all. We can just not get ourselves involved.
Right.
But
and I think that's really what it comes down to is like, look, we have this narrative of we are exporting democracy, or we're trying to elevate the world and eradicate human rights abuses. And the reality of it is we're not, and we shouldn't. And when we kind of go down that path and say this is what we need to do and this is what we're doing, we end up in these endless wars. And then at the same time, we end up hypocrites. And that's what's happened here in the case of Saudi Arabia. So it's better to just say we keep to ourselves, kind of doing what's best for our country. We definitely don't want certain human rights abuses. If things get really bad, obviously, then we should discuss and potentially intervene in certain circumstances. But overall, I think the country has to sort of reconcile with which way are we going to be, really.
Right. And in Yemen, some of our, as the AP has reported, some of our allies in coordination with us have been operating torture chambers there where they roast human beings on an open spit. Like this, that's what our side is doing in Yemen. So to try to say that either side there is better or worse is not really going to work out well for the side that is roasting people alive. But anyway,
on that note,
looking forward to your radar up next.